Hello, Hunters, and welcome back to Superfan Natural. Hunters, I don't know about you, but personally, I'm a big fan of horror movies. I watched Nightmare on Elm Street for the first time when I was 7 years old, and that one event left me with a lifelong addiction to all things dark and macabre. By the time I got around to watching Supernatural, I'd seen a lot of scary movies. And as I watched through the series for the first time, I couldn't help but notice that several episodes were clearly inspired by popular horror films. For example, the first few seasons gave us a redneck cannibal family, a poltergeist that's fought off with the help of some random psychic lady, a bloodborne rage virus, and a serial killer who offs people in their dreams. Now this isn't anything new. All fiction is inspired by what came before. Most of the time, the show does a good job of walking the line between inspiration, homage, and plagiarism. The writers take a concept or trope and do something interesting with it. For example, the episode Dream a Little Dream for Me is unquestionably inspired by Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, come on, the bad guy kills people in their dreams. However, in the episode, dreamwalking isn't just a fun plot device. It's used to explore the deep fears and anxieties that certain characters are suppressing. The episode The Benders doesn't really do anything new with psycho hillbillies. However, just the fact that the monsters in that episode are humans kind of is a twist in and of itself. Overall, the show does a good job of using something from another work without just ripping it off. Most of the time. Every once in a while, an episode would come along that came really close to that line between inspiration and knockoff. Be it a whole plot or just a single element, some episodes ended up feeling a little too similar to things that came before them. And one time, we got 2 of these episodes, not only in the same season, but in pretty quick succession. Season 11 gave us some fun and interesting episodes, including one that took place entirely within the Impala. However, its 13th and 16th episodes each felt a little derivative of other horror media. At least to me, and since they aired relatively close to each other, it really stuck out to me. For too long, I've been stewing about this as a lone crazy person, but now I have a platform and a captive audience to whom I can spread my brilliant madness. So let me tell you about the time one of my favorite shows ripped off 2 separate horror movies in the same season. Before we really get into it, I gotta make it clear that this video is just for fun. It's in no way meant to cast aspersions onto anyone who worked on the series. I don't know what goes into making a TV show, let alone one that had so many episodes. I'm just an overthinking geek who noticed some crossover between 2 things I enjoy, and thought it would make a fun YouTube video. Alright, with that in mind, let's get into Supernatural Season 11, Episode 13, Love Hurts. The episode centers around a married couple and their babysitter, with whom the husband is having an affair. The sitter gets her heart ripped out by someone who looks like the husband, but turns out it's not actually him. Later, he gets his heart ripped out by someone who looks like the sitter, but obviously it's not actually her. After the wife is visited by her dead husband, she reveals that she knew about the affair and sought help from her magical hairdresser, who gave her a spell to win back her hubby. However, it turns out what she actually got was a curse that summons a shape-shifting creature called a Kareen that hunts down whoever the caster marked with a kiss. Basically, you activate the spell by smooching your target, and the monster takes the form of that person's crush and goes after them until they're dead or they kiss someone else, who then becomes the next target. The wife unintentionally marked her husband, but then he unknowingly passed the curse onto the sitter after he smooched her. Once the Kareen gets its current mark, it then goes after the person who marked them, basically killing everyone who was involved in the makeout chain until it finally kills the original caster. Dean kisses the wife in order to keep the monster away from her, while Sam goes to attack the witch. The Kareen takes the form of Amara because of Dean's complicated feelings, and eventually Sam breaks the curse, and the day is saved. Happy Valentine's Day. So here's the thing. The basic plot of this episode isn't necessarily ripped off from any particular movie. I mean, it might be. I'm sure something similar has been done before, but for the most part, nothing about it jumps out as derivative. Nothing, that is, except the monster. Now that is something that I've seen before. If you've ever seen a little horror movie called It Follows, then you too may have noticed a few similarities. The movie centers around a young woman who's given what amounts to a sexually transmitted curse by her boyfriend, which causes her to be endlessly pursued by a creepy shape-shifting monster. It always knows where she is, it can look like anyone at any time, and it will never stop until it gets her, at which point she's dead. The only way to buy some time is to pass the curse on to someone else by banging them, but even that is only a temporary solution, because if the creature gets its new target, it'll start going after the person they got the curse from again. Basically, once you're a part of this curse or whatever, you're never going to be fully safe ever again, because the follower could come after you at any moment. Like, they're not exactly the same, but come on, the Kareen is very clearly a slightly altered knockoff of the follower. To me, the most egregious similarity is the fact that both monsters will work backwards through their chain of victims. I mean, that's arguably the scariest and most unique part of It Follows. Now, like I said before, this isn't the first time that the show borrowed unique elements from other media, but this one feels different, and honestly, it might just come down to a matter of timing, since this episode aired less than a year after It Follows was widely released. The movie may not have become a horror classic in the same league as Halloween or Friday the 13th, but it was fairly popular upon release. Coupled with the fact that they didn't really do anything particularly new or creative with the elements that they borrowed, and it just comes off more as a knockoff than an homage. It's a shame too, there's plenty of stuff in the movie that the show could have touched on in order to add its own DNA. For example, one of the things that garnered a lot of attention and discourse about the movie was its rules and how they could possibly be exploited. That's perfect material for Supernatural to work with, but unfortunately, no dice. Beyond that though, the episode is fine. They touch on something that was established way back in Season 5, that being Dean's love for Valentine's Day. He even gets to hook up with someone, which isn't super common in later seasons. Also, at one point, Sam fights off the monster by just whacking it with this chair. That's not really important or anything, it just cracks me up. So yeah, it's a fun episode with some obvious inspiration, and honestly, if it were the only episode like that, then I probably wouldn't have thought much about it. However, just 3 episodes later, the show delivered another story with some striking similarities to a horror movie. Let's talk about Season 11, Episode 16, Safe House. Shortly after her moving into a new house with her mom, a little girl falls into a mysterious coma. Based off of what her mom says, the Winchesters believe that the house is haunted. However, after a bit of investigating, they find out that they're actually dealing with a soul eater, a creature that lives in its own little pocket dimension outside of time and space. The thing will suck people's souls into its nest and feed off of them while their bodies die, and it's actually been around for a while. In fact, Bobby and Rufus hunted it about 6 years prior to the episode, and we actually get to see their investigation as it runs parallel to the current situation. Both stories climax with one member of each duo, Bobby and Dean, entering the nest and the Soul Eater possessing their body in order to fight their partner. Ultimately, Rufus traps the creature until 2016 when Sam kills it, though it's a little complicated because the nest exists outside of regular space-time, so both events kind of happen simultaneously. In fact, Dean and Bobby catch a glimpse of each other as they're pulled back into reality, and it's very sweet. All of the victims in both timelines wake up, and the day is saved. Guys, I'm not gonna lie, this is a really fun episode. It's nice to see Bobby and Rufus, and the whole parallel happenings thing is really interesting. Overall, good episode. However, it has more than a few similarities to a movie that is fairly well known among horror fans, but isn't super popular with mainstream audiences. It's called Insidious, and it was released 6 years before this episode aired. I'm gonna discuss it now, so skip ahead if you don't want to get spoiled on the movie's plot. Anyway, in the movie, a family moves into a new home, and shortly thereafter, the youngest son falls into a mysterious coma. After some haunted happenings, the family contacts a psychic who reveals that the boy isn't asleep. His soul is actually trapped in a place called the Further. The kid actually has the ability to astral project, and during one of his outings, he got nabbed by a Darth Maul demon. The psychic also reveals that she met the dad when he was a child because he had the same abilities as his son, and the psychic suppressed them in order to keep him safe. The dad reactivates his powers, heads into the Further, saves his son, and eventually he also gets out and everyone lives happily ever after. I think. There's 4 movies and I've only seen the first 2. The sequel reveals that since the Further exists outside of space-time, the events in different time periods can interact. And in fact, several scenes from the first movie were actually caused by events in the second. So hopefully you can see why I feel like this is a little much. There are a few other little details that are also very similar between the show and the movie. The nest looks very similar to the Further. They're both washed out, dark sepia tone reflections of reality, and some of the spirits that inhabit them are lifeless and empty. Also, both dimensions have this thing where some people can see certain spirits and others can't. It's weird. Both stories also include the victim's body being possessed in order to fight the living. Like, they're not the exact same story, but come on, there's clearly more similarities here than normal. I will say, though, that I think the writers did more with this concept than they did the previous one. The parallel storylines do a lot to make the episode feel unique, and it's not really something that they got from Insidious. Also, Sam once again uses a chair smash to fight the monster. I now consider it his signature weapon. So yeah, there's plenty of unique stuff here, but still, once you start noticing similarities, it's really hard to ignore. And with that, dear sexy viewer, I rest my case. I personally feel like the evidence stacks up in my favor, but what do you think? You know how to let me know, so let me know, bro. I know this topic was a little weird, but hey, if it wasn't to your taste, then don't even worry about it, because I've got plenty of other topics that I plan on covering, so why not stick around for a hot minute? Just a reminder that there's no set schedule for this channel. I just kind of make videos as I'm able to, and sometimes there'll be more in quick succession, and other times there'll be more time between releases. I'll have more content for you soon enough, but for now, carry on,